I mean, do you agree that that seems to make him pretty unhappy?
Well, I don't know. What is happiness? Some of us see life as being a case of honourable labour. That you're going to have to battle. You're going to have to work hard. It won't always be done with a pretty face, and often you wish, that you had a quiet life, picking apples and making cider. But,
right.
but for some reason we end up in the world that we do. I'm sure your world as a writer and journalist has its downsides.
Oh, sure.
It's just that in music you tend to be stared at by 1,000 people, and you have a light on you, and often what the light sees may not be a particularly happy camper. I defend Robert's right to look the way he likes. Just what we want here is the music.
Right.
If the music has something in it, I don't care whether the guy has horns on his head or is looking the wrong way on stage, or like Miles Davis is standing with his back to the audience. I don't care. You can wear a funny suit and be like Kiss if you want, but so long as the music's happening, I don't care what you do.
Right. Now, getting back to Jon for a moment, how is Jon Anderson different in person to work with than people might project him to be? Because he's got sort of like a cosmic sort of veil around him or whatever that people perceive because of his lyricism.
Well, don't forget, it's been a long time since I knew Jon. I really can't speak for him now, but my recollection is that yes, there was a very soft and charming, as you say, kind of halo veiled side around him, which most people saw on stage and appeared on stage, but he could also have a fist of steel and a velvet glove,
Right. The hippie with the iron hand, is that?
I think that's a very fair kind of description. Yeah, he was very energetic in his tenacious belief in the group to start with, and I think I cite in the book that I can remember him now sitting on the staircase in this apartment we lived in, screaming at promoters and bullying them into giving us a gig.
Right.
And without somebody like that, somebody who really believes in a project, and Jon always believed in Yes, and it's a wonderful thing to do that and to be around someone who's like that. Without somebody like that, you ain't going to get nowhere,
Right.
So you need your Jon Anderson, you need your Robert Fripp. These guys are often unbelievably tenacious in pursuit of an idea and getting that idea out into the world by hell or high water. And it can be ugly, as I say. Sometimes the fist comes down and sometimes people get hurt. Isn't there an expression about cracking eggs to make an omelet?
Right. You can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Right. Now, you mentioned several times in the book how loose the accounting methods were in the early days, how muddled the contracts, how one person could end up double and triple dipping from the till. At what point did you get wise to that? At what point did that begin to change?
Again, it's you wouldn't believe really how naive and childish we all were to start with. That somehow if anybody gave you $30 a week or $50 a week, you thought you were in heaven, and that's it. You didn't ask any further questions.
Right.
Until maybe 10, 15 years later, and well, actually, I remember there were money troubles in Yes.
There still are, yeah.
Oh, there still are, probably. There always have been, I think. And until the industry came under professional regulation with real accountants and real lawyers, and some of whom acted for the musician even, it was really a free-for-all. Again, the guy who banged his fist on the table and said, "Give me some money," probably got it.
Right.
But as I also mentioned, it was an industry that tended to be growing. This was a growth industry through the 70s, certainly. I think there was a dip in the 1973. I remember an oil crisis, one of the early oil crises in 1973, and the cost of vinyl shot up. And suddenly the record industry wasn't the bed of roses it had been. But nevertheless, it was a growth industry for many years. And so, if you don't make much money this year, well, you'd make more money next year.
Right, and you just assumed that the money would always keep
Yeah, a little bit. But we were, you wouldn't have believed the kind of naivete. We were told that you went on tour to sell records. The only reason you went on tour was to promote a record, which, generally speaking, was indeed the case. But there were concerts and there were fees, but we kind of didn't know anything about that. And nobody really, gave us any tour accounts till about 15, 20 years into my career, certainly.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was this way back then, but there's an absolute fortune to be made in touring at a high level like that.
Now there is. There wasn't so much in those days. We didn't know about merchandising.
Right.
So, you played the concert, and if you weren't too expensive a group, you made some money, but on the whole, the bands I was in, like Yes and King Crimson, were pretty expensive to run. We had our own sound systems and light shows and stuff, and it was expensive.
Right. Now, you wrote in your book that you could make more money by suspending all new recording projects and simply focusing on collecting outstanding royalties that are still owing. That's a staggering thing.
I would think that's true. There is quite a healthy industry in royalty collection, and what's that word I'm looking for? Auditing.
Oh, right.
There's always an accountant who will audit another accountant, a lawyer who will sue another lawyer, and you can go around that game forever if you want. And you can make a reasonably handsome living finding that payment from Argentina that never came through.
Right.
But it's kind of dull existence. I'd rather make some new music.
Right, I got you. You came up in an age and time, a rather brief window opened where a band could actually get a major record label to fund a record like Close to the Edge or Red or, a pretty unusual record, and it could find a real audience. Did you realize at the time how good you had it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we realized that at all. I think we thought that was how life was. Now, looking back, of course, I realized that I came up through a golden era when, the kind of crew had mutinied and taken over the ship, and the usual guys, the captain, and the singer and the songwriter and the record producer, who were the main people, the main players. They kind of suddenly have vacated the bridge, and we guys, the musicians, kind of, ran riot. And yeah, you're right. We sold records on this stuff, and there was FM radio in place at the time, and FM radio would run 10-minute tracks called Stairway to Heaven or something. And life was great. We thought it was like that. Now, of course, I realize, as I see how difficult the music industry is again today, that we had it great. And it is difficult for me as a teacher, as I sometimes am, to get up in front of a class of anywhere from 30 to 80 young musicians of one sort or another who think they're going to make a life on a stage and be the drummer in U2.
Right.
And say, look, it's difficult. I don't want to discourage people.
Sure.
Because music's a wonderful thing. But you have to realize the truth. And the truth is, it's very difficult to make a living, and only if a handful of really good people make a good living on their instrument in each country.
Right. That's true. And isn't it really not to be negative, but making a living at music isn't so much to do with your talent as with just sheer tenacity. You
need both. You need a lot of talent, I think, and the top guys are the top guys for very good reason. Because they're great. They play absolutely beautifully.
Right.
The top record producers produce great records. The top singers are great because they're great singers. So you need the talent, but you need a huge amount of patience and stamina to get there. And you could use a couple of lucky breaks as well, even if you've got all that in place. So you see that it can be tricky.
Right. It's a big struggle, even when you are successful.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I never stopped working every day of my life. In fact, probably before you called, I was calling some guy in some place, anywhere from Poland to, saying, hello, my name's Bill Bruford. The reason you need to hire me is because X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Sales never stops.